Welcome, everybody. I'm thrilled to have everybody join us today. Welcome to the fourth edition of our Future of Finance for the Technology Industry. This is a quarterly forum that we host where we really gather to gain insights on how the finance function is really at the forefront of digital transformation for the tech industry and how that is really focusing on some of the critical business outcomes and shaping strategic partnerships and joint ventures and key deals that we're seeing. So that's a little bit of what we're going to touch on today. I'll introduce myself. I'm Sarah Ferguson. I'm the Global Head of Marketing for Enterprise Application Services and Ecosystem Partners at TCS. And the focus of our session today is how artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies powered by enterprise applications can really drive resilient finance operations. So earlier this year, TCS published a CFO study, and one of the findings that we've had as part of that study was that the forward-thinking CEOs continue to look at and explore the role that they are playing in helping to transform the business and taking it from a traditional model to one that really enables the executive access to real-time insights. And I think that's really the golden ticket of where we're trying to get to with some of the transformation. So what we found in that study is that CFOs are asking questions, and some of the things that we're trying to help answer today are, how can I kind of turn the rising tide of enterprise data into real-time insights that drive that growth across the entire business? Some of the other things that we've heard are how can I better manage control? How can I manage the responsibility and the accountability to transform my organization into and to support that future-ready digital business model? Other things we're hearing are, how can I leverage these new technologies? Some of them may not be completely new, some are emerging, some have been around for a little bit. Things like blockchain, analytics, machine learning, AI. How do we enable real-time forecasting models to really get to that agile finance organization that is the end goal? So just to talk through this today, we have a fabulous lineup of speakers. I want to jump in and introduce them to you. First up, we have Bimal Tripathi. He is the Executive Director of IT and Head of Enterprise Applications for Maxim Integrated. We have with us Professor William Kong. William is the Rudd Family Professor of Management and Associate Professor of Finance at Cornell University. He's also a founding faculty director of the FinTech Initiative at Cornell. And we have Akhilesh Tiwari, who's the Vice President and Global Head for Enterprise Application Service at Tata Consulting Services. So throughout this forum, I want to encourage everybody to submit your questions. We're going to save a little bit of time at the end to go through some questions, answer as many as we can with this panel. And anything that we can't answer, we will definitely follow up and continue the conversation. So to get started, I'm just going to jump right in. Let's get to the core of our topic today. So the core of what we're going to talk about is, why do we need to transform finance operations in a tech company? So Bimal, Akhilesh, tell us a little bit about your perspectives on why this is important and how we see technology as really becoming an enabler for finance operations. Bimal, well, I'll hand it over to you and let's get started.
Thanks, Sarah. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening all, depending on where you are. Great to be with my wonderful and accomplished panelists, and thank you all for joining. So let me start. Modernization of finance operations through artificial intelligence and machine learning is important for CFO organizations in two levels. The first one is being equalizer, and it ensures that the company is not at a disadvantage in their industry. These are the basic tools that enable a company to reduce operational cost, improve transactional accuracy, and also increase business velocity. Good news is that it's not a big barrier to entry. There are a lot of successful products in this space, such as workflow engines, analytics dashboard, RPA, robotic process automation, and chatbots. These are great starting point for any company due to low cost of deployment and immediate return on investment. And they also streamline the day-to-day work for the teams. But the real power comes at the next level. And next level is where the artificial intelligence and the finance technology has the potential to become a real competitive advantage. Companies, as you saw, generating a lot of data. So the question is, how can we use it as the modern corporate currency? You may have heard that AI is the new electricity. and the data is the fuel that is driving this electricity. So finance organizations are in a unique position to lead the company to harness this power. This includes applying latest techniques in machine learning, artificial intelligence, and predictive analytics. And it can help with the management decisions, business agility at every level. They provide actionable insights quickly because computer is doing all the work which in the past was done by human beings. They are very good at repeatable tasks, which means all the time that gets freed up for the finance analyst and the CFO team, they can be utilized for the higher value add tasks, such as the strategic tasks which a machine cannot do, talking to the customer, which requires human intervention. So it's not only good for the company financial performance, it is also leading to improved customer experience, help companies deliver better service quality, and foster a stronger partner relationship. Now, let me explain why CFO organization is uniquely positioned to do that. It is because the finance team is very data oriented and they have the process and system mindset. So with the skill, it's not only the finance team which will benefit, it will also make an impact across the entire company value chain. Under finance team, it's very common to see, they have advanced analytics team, data sciences teams, they do routine financial activities. And because they have the visibility across the entire company, they can identify the right initiatives, partner with other functions, and bring different teams together and deliver the business outcome with the highest return on investment. I would also add that these are the kind of projects that bring a sense of pride and excitement to the teams. The modern workforce is looking for exciting opportunities to work. Companies in Silicon Valley and across the world, they have launched the training programs where they want every employee to be aware of the machine learning, artificial intelligence. So company are not only becoming productive and efficient, it is also making organizations exciting and helps them attract the great talent and makes their company a great place to work.
Yeah. Akhilesh, any thoughts on that?
Well, Sarah, first of all, let me start with thank you to you for hosting us, and big thanks to Bimal and Professor Kong for joining us, and thanks to all the people who are listening to us in this fourth edition of Future of Finance. So what we learned from our CFO study is that technology has given the finance leaders a game-changing ability to capture, process, analyze data on every stage of the value chain, on every customer, every touch point with the customer. And that has enabled them to gain real-time access and derive some strategic insights from that access. What we see is that maturity of the CFO organizations to harness this capability which has come through the digital transformation is at three levels. The first level is where they are trying to generate efficiency. So efficiency catalyst role is what they're playing. The second one is when they're looking at their enterprise-wide data and become business stewards, give insights to their C-level colleagues. And the third one is where they're really becoming strategic partners, where they're able to see the outside financial data coming in and combine that with their insights that they see from their customer data, sales data, supply data, and be able to give a strategic direction to their company. So finance function now can really focus on delivering insights for fact-based decision making, which will help the CFOs and finance teams to be key strategic partners of the organization.
Well, I love that analogy you made, Bimal, around the electricity and the fuel. That really rings true. I think I'm going to remember that one. So let's switch gears. And Professor Kong, I think we talked a little bit here and got an idea of where the finance mandate is moving with the CEOs and some of those changes that we're seeing. shifting from maybe reporting to more of this explaining and predicting expectations. So with some of the research that you've done, what are the expectations now for these emerging technologies to really change the world in finance over the next couple of years? What are you seeing coming down the pipeline?
Sarah, thank you for having me here. Thank you for hosting the event. I also took a look at our TCS CFO study, which was really insightful and informative. It is true that from now through at least the year 2025, companies will place enormous responsibilities on their CFOs to create business models as they transition into a real-time digital-first culture. Based on academic studies and also observations from the industry, the good news is that technologies are ready. So in my view, there are at least going to be 3 ways that technologies are going to affect how finance is done. And some of these definitely echo what we have already heard from Bimal and Akhilesh. So the first one is just the increasing use of big data. We know they are going to give us more robust business analytics. We're going to have more real-time forecasting. And importantly, we're going to be able to do more customization. Right? We already know alternative and unstructured data, such as satellite pictures, text in newspaper. They are very effective in trading, in investment, in credit approval, or insurance contract writing. What we need there and what we are going to see is more combination of business, economic, financial insights with these technical tools we have. So it's not only about using these statistical packages off the shelf. We're going to see economists, business managers working together with our programmers, computer science experts in order to make this happen. And speaking of using the data, it's not only about data for the product itself. It's also about data about our customers. We're just going to see financial service firms becoming more customer-centric. And we need a digital one-stop shop. So in order to provide the best services, we need to continue gathering data about our customers and learning more about their preferences using big data. I'm happy to expand more on that later, but big data is definitely an important aspect. Second, AI or machine learning algorithms, right? With data, we could be getting worse answers, right? Data is data, garbage in, garbage out. What is important is the tools or the algorithm that we have to analyze data. To put it very bluntly, if we don't add AI or machine learning component, it's virtually certain that our competitors will. And AI is well on the way to become the stable state for the analytics that improve customer experience and interactions. It's going to create new issues as we start to use these new tools. And what I suspect that we're going to see is more work being done about interpretable AI, about understanding the algorithms we use to ensure fairness, to prevent discrimination. And finally, which is not quite the focus of today's conversation, but we already see these general purpose technologies enabling scaling in the business space. And we're going to see a greater demand for reducing intermediary rent. In all these digital ecosystems, we're going to see a demand for reducing market power, more peer-to-peer interactions. That's already happening in the P2P lending space, crowdfunding. It's actually a form of financial inclusion and democratization at the same time, as many people working in decentralized finance or the crypto world are advocating. So it's important for incumbents to think about how we incorporate these new developments into the existing framework, and at the same time paying attention to the evolution of this regulatory landscape. I think at least in all these dimensions, we're going to see technologies changing the way we do finance.
That's fascinating, because I think that we really, big data has been around for a while, and it sounds like we're just really getting better and better at how to utilize it, right? And I think the veracity of the data, as you put in, and going out continues to be something that's critical to utilizing AI, and especially when we think about some of the ways that we know that we have biases that are inherently in the AI that we're creating. So I think that's really an interesting area to explore. Akhilesh, I'll kind of switch gears here and kind of going back to some of the area of expertise around some of the enterprise application services and the product vendors. I know you have a lot of experience dealing with a lot of the leading product vendors in this space. And if we take a look from that angle, maybe what do you see as maybe the transformative potential of AI and machine learning for finance operations? And Will, I'd like to hear your perspective on that as well.
There are several specific areas, Sarah, where AI and ML can help transform the finance function, such as investment predictions, risk management, supplier evaluation, customer engagement, payment predictions. I'll share a few examples here. In the area of cost savings, for example, we in TCS have probably some of the lowest cost of running our finance operations given the size and spread of the company. And that has come by way of technology. Our finance organization has embraced technology to the maximum extent possible. And one area is claims processing for employees. Every company has reimbursements that they make to their employees. What TCS has done is that we've been able to, looking at the data, we've been able to identify areas where the claims can be processed straight through, and they don't have to go through multiple levels of approvals. And we have been continuously refining that algorithm to ensure that the limits of the benchmark or threshold values of those approvals keep going up. And what the added benefit is, it's not only reduce our cost, it's increased the employee experience, because now the moment the employee submits a claim, he or she has it reimbursed. And then we do sample checks in the back end where people go and verify if the claim is right or not to prevent any kind of fraud. But the fact that we are able to process most of our claims straight, that gives enormous time back to our finance function, to our employees, and also ensures higher employee satisfaction. Another area is procure to pay, where the suppliers, every company has suppliers, we do too across the globe, but consolidated analysis of the data of all the supplier behavior and all the supplier related decisions that we make, that has given us tremendous leeway in getting the best from our supplier ecosystem. And I can go on the list: streamlining our accounting and compliance, enhancing productivity with reduced risks. So in all, the impact that AI and ML is having on our businesses is already quite substantial, and there is a lot of headroom for all of us to take advantage of.
Will, any thoughts on that angle?
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree on all these developments. I'm a finance professor, so I kind of think about investment, portfolio management, how AI machine learning could be having a big impact there. But when it comes to corporate finance, it's also about managing a portfolio of assets and projects. It's about risk management for the firm. So in a sense, it's also, portfolio management per se. And traditionally, how do we do portfolio management? Well, we try to make forecasts, accurate forecasts of assets return or risk, and then we put together the portfolio or put together a combination of projects. But AI, in particularly the reinforcement learning, could be changing that approach that has been there for 70 years. It's possible nowadays to use a deep neural net model to optimize a portfolio directly. with great auto sample performance in the test data. If we are talking about investing in the US equity market, the outperformance could be, as much as 2 points in terms of Sharpe ratio if you are into the financial jargons there. But it's not the only story. It actually allows us to do more automated advising, investment advising. It allows us to incorporate preferences of the clients of the managerial objective and to customize it more. And where do these tools come from? Well, they all come from innovations in self-driving, in computer vision, machine translation. But we just have to properly, tailor them to financial applications. Another area that Akhilesh mentioned is streamlining accounting and compliance. And that's where AI could potentially be combined with blockchain technology. Right? Blockchain is serving as the infrastructure for secure multi-party computation. And what it could enable is, for example, auditing firms working together to give regulators, for example, PCAOB, auditability, but at the same time preserve customer data privacy through encrypted computation. And I have some studies in IE Computer Journal and Management Science talking about this, and happy to chat more on this direction as well.
Yeah, I'm sure we have some folks in the audience who would love to dive into that. So we'll have to find a way to share those studies with the attendees after the event.
Happy to.
But let me switch gears back to Bimal and Will. So in your experience, what are the areas of machine learning capabilities in the finance processes that are emerging or in the pipeline in the near future? I know we talked a little bit already about some emerging and what we're seeing around AI. So let me just pass that back to Will and get your thoughts, and then we'll share over with Bimal as well.
Sure. Some of what I'm going to discuss may not be in place yet, but I do believe they are fast emerging. Speaking of finance processes, I think managerial decision making, especially CFO decision making, right, concerning capital budgeting, internal market allocation, constitute a very important aspect of managerial activities. And nowadays we have a lot of data. For sure, we have a lot of observations. We have many dimensions of actions, potential actions. I can change the leverage. I can, change the investment budget for a particular plant or department. But the key is how to use all these input variables. Coming back to the reinforcement learning methodology that I was talking about, I think we can really utilize these tools. And there are good reasons why we want to utilize them. For example, in economics, we emphasize a lot causal identification through natural experiment, through policy change. But it's hard to do. We don't have so many observations. Yes, we can perform experiments, but they are costly. We're talking about real business. There are real costs involved. So how do we effectively extract information from historical data using, for example, AI reinforcement learning? I think that's definitely in the pipeline for the near future. And that's something I'm actively researching on as well. Now, related to that, when we use these AI tools or big data analytics, we need to understand what's going on and effectively communicate that, communicate our financial decisions, financial operations to regulators and investors. How do we do that? Well, explainable AI or interpretive AI would be the way to go. And in a very recent study, I was trying to use, if we use a technical term, generative adversarial network that's used in picture recognition to derive from historical data what decision makers, managers are actually optimizing. What are their objectives when they take the actions that they took, right? When we look at the historical data, I think that's another aspect that's going to affect how we understand financial processes. I can go on to talk about hiring decisions for the firm, exploitation versus exploration when it comes to human resource data. But the applications are limited in some regard. We'd love to hear what Bemo thinks.
Bemo,
Very
thoughts on
impressive.
that?
Very fascinating, Professor Kong. I'm grateful that the academics is doing research in this, which is pretty much powering the economy across the globe. Very, very insightful thoughts. So let me share more at the tactical level how we are taking the research that Professor Kong talked about and then applying it into the day-to-day functioning and operations of a company. So each company has very unique challenges and they're specific to the industry, the customer base, the product and services they offer. Now, AI can be applied to address these challenges. Some of the emerging areas are the finance management Professor Kong talked about. That's definitely up there. Then other areas are business growth, branding, compliance, and many time-critical activities where cost of making a mistake is high and doing the things quicker and faster gives companies a lot of advantage. Akhilesh talked about procure to pay, big area where AI can help. A typical company, just take a example of invoices. So a typical company gets hundreds of invoices in different formats, and they spend a lot of time just entering and processing the invoices, and they spend less time in managing the vendor and payment and looking at the financial aspect. AI can sort it out, automate, and give end-to-end visibility and management tools to the finance team to manage that. Another area which is critical to CFO team is all about customer facing, maximizing the value of their offerings. So things in pricing, quoting, opportunity pipeline management. So we see a lot of innovation being applied where it can take a huge amount of data, past customer behavior, the buying pattern, seasonality, and then do a prediction of what is the price at which the deal is likely to close. Same thing for quoting, helping determine which project at a customer side is going to be the best fit and how can they help close it in a fastest and most efficient manner. For planning team, it creates improved forecasting, which can help tremendously for the entire company planning, ranging from capacity planning to optimizing inventory in the supply chain. Sarah talked about the finance close activities. So we don't have to do everything manually. Many of the things can be done automatically right now, and analysts only need to look at the exceptions. The bottom line is that it means better finance KPIs, better gross margins, better days of inventory, and better DSOs. This can also be applied to the customer experience. All of us are so dependent on the recommendation engine, be it Amazon, be it Netflix, and AI can understand the customer behavior across multiple channels and help companies create better products and services, and then also deliver them in a format that best meets the customer needs. CRMs have built-in feature to identify the customer accounts and what kind of issues they are going to have, and then help build a knowledge base so that if the customer does indeed run into those issues, companies can respond very quickly and in a timely manner. Compliance and audit is another area. Companies have audit teams, and then there's an external audit process, but the regulations are moving very fast, and they are larger than the capacity of the internal teams. So AI algorithms can make sure once a regulation is implemented, once an audit is put in place, humans don't have to run it because the machine can do it for them. They can do continuous checks and raise red flags. Earlier, a company finds out about a audit issue, they can respond to it quickly and fix it before it can cause damage to the company brand or reputation. Another area is cybersecurity and data breaches. A lot of innovation is happening using AI to enforce compliance, such as GDPR, CCPA, HIPAA, and others. So the algorithms can see where the data is getting breached or it's getting into the hands of an unauthorized person. CFO team, as we heard before, they are the gatekeepers of the intellectual property, and increasingly AI is going to help to detect the security breaches or access control or threat to the physical security of the company. Professor Kong also talked about the computer vision, right? That's another opportunity. We don't have to do physical inventory using, person going and counting stuff, because a drone with the computer vision enabled technology can quickly do the inventory check more frequently. Image processing can be used for 100% quality inspection, which will improve the customer satisfaction, reduce the returns, and human beings only have to do the analysis for a small percent of the visual inspection. So across the board, we see a lot of applications where AI is doing a game-changing improvement.
Yeah, just purely from a marketing standpoint, right? I mean, a highly sensitive when you mentioned potential damage to brand and reputation, of course, is something that is a red flag for marketing. So it really just shows how many areas of the business that this can touch, right? It really touches across all areas and all functions. And I think that's really an eye opener for many. When we think about all those areas, what are the ways where we can help use our enterprise applications, and how can that be enabled by them, so to speak? Or how are enterprise applications and those companies, those vendors investing in building resilience in the finance operations of what the applications that they're building now? Do you have some thoughts on that from that perspective?
Yeah, sure. Great question, Sarah. And it hits, all the teams, because we are going through this every day. So let me start out by highlighting how AI and ML-based applications are helping with the company operations. So any company, these capabilities are built on 3 building blocks. First is people, second is data, and third is the processes. And this would be a good framework which can be adopted by any company, especially the CFO organization, as they begin their finance modernization process. So on the people front, right, companies are investing in up-leveling the role of analyst. A lot of analysts are getting trained into data scientist practices, and they bring the subject matter expertise along with the latest principles of AI and ML. It's making them very powerful and very valued asset. All the incoming workforce is very AI aware as they grow up in the age of self-driving car, personal assistant, and virtual reality. So if given the right tools and support, they would embrace the new tools to reduce the mundane and routine tasks and contribute at higher strategic value to drive continuous improvement in the company operations. The second pillar is the data. Professor Kong talked about big data, right? So that's the important pillar. We are getting a lot of data generated from multiple sources, but AI and ML can not only bring the data together, but they can harness the power of that data to make meaningful management decisions and drive business actions. So CFOs are investing in building data infrastructure, high performance database for data processing. It's making the AI models run quickly. It enables data scientists to run experiments, test a hypothesis, reject bad choices quickly. So data, as I said, is the fuel to run the whole harness the power of this technology. And the third pillar is processes. Again, Professor Kong talked about that, the governance and data discipline. Data may be generated in one area, but it may be invaluable for some other part of the value chain. The glue that makes the AI project successful is having the ability to collate the data across multiple steps in the value chain. And ability to merge the data is critical to make meaningful prediction in the value chain. Now let me come to the second part. You talked about the operational resilience. That's a great challenge that many companies are facing. We are living in a lot of unknowns. Pandemic is a good example. There are geopolitical disturbances. So how do we use AI ML to make our operations more resilient? So in terms of definition, the resiliency is the continuation of operations in the face of unforeseen or unplanned event. In the recent time, pandemic, tariff wars, geopolitical events, they have caused disruption in the thing. And another one which might happen anytime is the economic cycle. So we are in the middle of the longest economic expansion, which at some point in time, invariable will come to an end. So which will require people to decide, how to respond to these changes. So companies have to prepare for these changes. These events, when they occur, they require quick and coordinated management response. And for management to respond, they need early warnings. They want to see what data points are emerging on the horizon, which will warn them of business shocks. And once they recognize that, then their ability to combine the data from multiple sources and then create a picture of the risk so that they are better prepared to respond to that. And AI can help bring all this data together, spot early signs of disruptions, and then provide blueprint for the management teams, for the companies to make adjustment to respond in terms of the demand fluctuations, in terms of the supply chain, in terms of the people management, resource allocation, capital spending, right? So these are the kind of things which will be enabled if a company is utilizing AI-based technologies.
There's certainly a lot packed into that around living in an uncertain time, and how much resiliency has been really critical in the last 18 months, and how much that's accelerated just by the pandemic. So Akhilesh, I'm sure you have a strong viewpoint on how critical are the enterprise applications that we use, or what's being developed to building in that resilience in finance.
So, Sarah, I believe enterprise applications are extremely critical to building resilience in finance. Bimal talked about number of areas. I'll pick one area which I believe is also one of the very powerful indicators of a company's health of finance function. Not only that, I think the company's overall health of their business processes, and that is closing, the book closing at the end of quarter or end of the year. Now, number of companies take an average between 2 to 3 weeks to close their finance books. Now, a quarter is about 13 weeks on average, and if you're taking 2 to 3 weeks of time to close those books, so think about the executive management time, which is still occupied to a large extent, thinking about the past period and not really freed up to make decisions of the coming quarter or coming quarters. And that's about 20-25% time that they end up in sort of suspended animation for that period when they're waiting for their books to be closed so that they can put a finish on the previous period and take decisions for the future period of the quarter. AI, ML, intelligent accounting automation can help with the GR/IR reconciliation, intelligent accruals, and intercompany reconciliations, all of which delay the closing process. Now, we in TCS have come to a stage where we can close our books within 24 hours for management reporting, and that frees up a lot of executive time to think about future, and that goes to show that what kind of difference enterprise applications can make. And I guess executive time, in my view, is one of the most valuable precious resources of a company, and freeing up that resource up to 20-25% is a huge benefit, not only for just the cost of it, but also from a strategic imperative point of view. It's a huge uplift that companies can get by this freeing up of the time. So, and this is all possible now because of technology. And we've seen when during pandemic, when finance functions could not work together, they were all disputed. So all of a sudden we see a proliferation of number of enterprise applications coming together to give a very effective fast closing solution to our customers.
So I just want to circle back around sort of on that point, because you talked about saving the time of the executives, which is so critical, right? We can really steer them to being more strategic and investing in their time in other ways. So just kind of staying on that thread. So if we think about cost saving for AI technologies, that it sounds like this is one area they're really able to integrate to transform their own role and how they spend their time. So if we look at how can CFOs use AI technologies in cost cutting maybe across the enterprise? I think we touched a little bit on this earlier, but Akhilesh, I'll just hand it back to you to kind of continue that thread.
Yeah, I mean, all the areas that Bimal and Professor Kong talked about eventually result in cost savings. One of the big areas for finance function is management of working capital, and with now the newer algorithms, we are able to more accurately predict what's going to be the collection, the cash flow from our customers, depending on the different customers' behavior of how they pay. So you have a better understanding of how much cash you will have at the end of the period. And looking at the customer demand, looking at our own spend patterns, we are able to better predict what is going to be our spend. And the difference of the two can then help you make decisions on what kind of working capital you would need and where is the best place to borrow if you have to borrow. And we've seen the companies who are leveraging AI/ML to manage the cash flow prediction as well as the spend prediction. They are able to reduce the cost of interest quite substantially. And that's a direct saving for the enterprise, because you have to have working capital to survive. And if you can borrow that capital at optimized rates or optimize the capital distribution across different quarters, different periods, that saves huge costs for the companies. So the applications for AI/ML are limitless. We talked about some of the opportunities which are available, but as the advances come in blockchain as well as AI/ML, we will see further expansion of the impact that the technology is having on finance function in the future.
So, Bimal, some thoughts on that from your perspective around finance and the cost savings?
Yeah, great. Akhilesh, pointed out very good use cases. So let me start out by saying that finance is a cost center, so it has to balance resources between operations and strategic needs. So, and they have to also make trade-off between risk and efficiency. So it's important for finance to be able to reduce cost without impacting any of the customer service or SLAs. And not only within finance, but across the enterprise so that they can deliver better returns to the stakeholders. Let me give some examples within finance first, and then I'll expand it to the larger enterprise. So we see chatbots. All of us, interact with chatbots when we are, booking a ticket or finding something with a bank. And chatbots are what is helping with the customer support, the basic questions. The same technology is being applied within the company as well to answer routine questions from customers, vendors, or employees around expense reports, around claims, receivables, or vendor invoices. Payroll, another very sensitive area for the companies because no one wants to get paid incorrectly. RPA, which is robotic process automation, can orchestrate a low-touch process where any error in the payroll or any missing claims get highlighted immediately before employee get impacted by this. Akhilesh gave great example as well as Dr. Kong about the finance, right from period close, finance planning, capital planning, treasury, and tax management. Right, so these are the areas where more and more products are coming, which are helping do the routine processes, the traditional processes in a much faster and more systematic way. We don't have to do manual review of all the things because AI-enabled tools can look for the oddities and irregularities and spotlight exception area which require analyst review. Fraud detection, suspicious transactions, right? these are some of the things which cannot be done with human effort alone. So this is another area where finance is getting a lot of help from the AI tools. Now let's talk about larger organizations. So CFO organization can also drive the cost reduction program across the enterprises, such as supply chain teams, sales, marketing, and customer service. And most of this comes from the automation using new technologies. In supply chain, for example, the AI and ML can drive cost efficiency by having more accurate demand forecast and being able to predict the change in customer buying pattern very quickly, which in turn can help them replan the product mix and optimize the inventory or make changes to the supply chain. AI ML can also improve the signal to noise ratio for leads and opportunities or of the vast amount of data that we get, which means the sales team can now decide which accounts to go after or which opportunities are most likely to close and which are a good fit for the company and where the product is going to be a success. Natural language processing, a great help in the customer support. Some companies are using NLP. They can look at the past customer support transcripts and use that to build a knowledge base so that next time a customer who has a similar issue can go ask a question in the natural language to the knowledge base and they can get the answer. And we see success in this area in many of the interactions we do with the B2C companies. Dr. Kong gave example of hiring, right? So it can match candidates with the open positions, which means recruiters have more time to talk to candidates instead of searching for them. There are some examples. These are the examples in the high-tech industry, and there are different set of opportunities in other industries as well. Healthcare, retail, finance, banking, hospitality, right? So each of these industries can find use cases where they can deliver superior customer experience in a automated and cost-efficient way. So to sum it up, the takeaway is that if we look deeper into what we are doing, there are a lot of opportunities to apply these modern technologies to make things one step at a time. Make things one step at a time better, and using AI and ML and advanced analytics techniques.
That was a great summary. Certainly a lot to unpack there. I know we're running short on time, so I want to just throw one more question back over to Professor Kong and then take one more from the audience as we start to wrap up. So Will, we've talked a lot about AI and ML technologies coming in. I'm curious to see what the competitive landscape looks like with AI and excessive automation, really, like with regulations or fintech or even something like future of work, which I know is not your wheelhouse, but maybe you have a perspective on that.
Sure, happy to talk about that. So I think in general, we would all agree automation is replacing lower skilled workers in the labor market. That might cause greater inequality, certain social economic implications that's in the general debate these days. But what I think is interesting, that's different from this impact of automation, is really the greater or general trend of digitization. Everything is getting more digital, right? AI, machine learning, these are big data. These are just forms of how digitization is manifesting itself. So in a recent study, I was looking at working with my co-authors from Peking University, who's been conducting enterprise surveys on innovation and entrepreneurship in China for the past 7 years from 6 provinces. We've interviewed more than 10,000 entrepreneurs, and during the pandemic, we actually conducted a few phone surveys with them in February 2020, May, August, and it's still ongoing. We're doing more with Alibaba and JD.com about how work environment is changing over time. And what we find is that firms with greater digitization, greater work from home technologies were doing better during the pandemic. And of course, we know in China, the economy sort of reopened shortly after the outbreak. I think back in March last year, because of the very stringent policies, right, to contain the spread of the disease. So firms with more digitization were doing better, and after the reopening, more firms are getting more digitized. They are adopting more work from home. So the remote work environment is not temporary. I think that's something here to stay. And it's also partially driven by the greater demand for more decentralization, more decentralized work environment. Right? Firms with nowadays have a lot of online sales. Workers are working in different time zones. I think that's something we all should be paying attention to. And in fact, just to give you a number, during the pandemic, the firms with more work from home technologies opened 20% more than other firms, right, in Chinese setting. So what is important there? Infrastructure is key. We need to build an infrastructure that allows decentralized work environment, allows secure multi-party computation that I've touched upon. So that's about how I think workplace is going to evolve. You also mentioned regulation or competition in the space. I think that's right on target. Why is regulation or competition very different in this environment? Well, the technologies are allowing a lot of scaling, and we have network effect. That means if you create an ecosystem, naturally we're going to have giant firms that's hard to regulate, that has concentration of power. In addition to that, right, in addition to network effect, we're talking about data, big data, machine learning. Data is having a feedback effect. A firm with more data are going to improve their products and services more, and they're going to get more customers, more activities, more contracts, which generate more data. It's a positive feedback loop. That all means we might have winner takes all situation in the market, and that makes regulation very challenging. Not only about the data privacy, it's very hard for individuals to internalize the value of their data, right? When I log onto a website, I check, yes, I accept the cookies. I'm not paying too much attention. It gives me convenience right away. But data aggregated are very valuable. And it shouldn't be up to the individual customers to take hold of that or manage that effectively. Government needs to step in. We need more open data environment. Open banking is something that people have been talking about. We need to think about how payment technology, digital currencies are creating data in that ecosystem that could affect business or industry organization. We need to think about technologies that allow interoperability. Once we have interoperability, then breaking down big firms wouldn't cause us to lose too much on the network synergy. I think these are all regulatory issues that are going to emerge or have already emerged that are going to be very important over the next decade or so. That's just based on my observation.
Yeah, that's very relatable the way you framed it that way. I think we probably need another session just on that topic alone to really unpack that as well. I know we're running out of time, so I just want to kind of wrap up and grab one audience question, and this is going to be for you, Bimal. Someone in the audience has asked us that we're continuously investing in technology. It's an ongoing, never-ending thing. How are companies able to fund for their core growth or the modernization? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's a great question. So each company has a process. They look at multiple investment demands and then decide which one they are going to invest on based on the return on investment, right? So the business case for AI is no different from implementing a new system or implementing a new facility or a new lab, right? So it will follow the same process. Now, the good news is that not all AI and ML technologies require big capital investment, partly because there are some very good products in the market which can help companies quickly get started with their AI and ML journey. And once they get more sophisticated, even nowadays, cloud gives us all the flexibility, and it's a OpEx, and it's a low barrier to entry between Amazon, Google, Plex, and Azure, right? You have plenty of tools where companies can start very quickly, do something, show results, invest more, and take the traditional crawl, walk, and run kind of a model.
Okay, very insightful. Hopefully that answered the question for the audience. One more we're going to squeeze in before the top of the hour. Will, this one is for you. It says, Professor, with the invention of AI, there's going to be a drop in demand due to less people get employed in future at lower levels. So how do you see market demand for various products in the next 7 to 10 years from now?
Yeah, so if I understand the question correctly, it actually has two layers. One is about the labor side, right? We have more skilled labor being hired. What happens to the relatively lower skilled workforce? I think that's in the short run, it's going to hurt for sure. But in the intermediate or long run, it just means a transformation. Maybe we don't have to work as much. We can enjoy more leisure while utilizing all these tools. That's one possibility. I'm not too concerned about job creation in the long run. And as long as the workforce and our educational system is evolving correspondingly, right, to teach more about these more advanced technologies going forward. The other layer of the question is about product offering. Over there, I do have a concern with AI, with more complex, opaque algorithms, even though they are very effective for individual firms, for individual decision making. But in aggregate, because they are not so interpretable, because they might be correlated in the way that they uncover patterns, do we lead to more correlation, more synchronization? Does that mean a reduction in product differentiation? Does that mean a reduction in the variety of business models that we observe? Those are yet to be seen. And I think that's something social scientists and computer scientists are working together to provide us more answers.
Well, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, everyone in the audience. I'm sure that we had some really, really strong insights. This was very informational, very educational for me, and hopefully for everybody had some really strong takeaways. Thank you to each of the speakers for joining us today, and please reach out to us. We're happy to continue the conversation in additional sessions as well. So thank you all. Have a great day. Stay safe.
Thank you.